Hello, my name is Denis Clohessy and I'm a composer for film and theatre and also a sound designer for theatre. This is Fallow Table by Junk Ensemble, shot and directed by Luca Truffarelli. The role that I would have in theatre in particular is, I guess, bringing atmosphere essentially to the piece. Obviously I'm going to be watching a lot what the actors are doing. Depends on what the script is like. Often the set and the costumes will have an influence on what I do. But the role can vary greatly. It can be pretty minimal, and I have done a couple of productions which I've never seen. So the director may have asked me for just some kind of like linking piece, or something to get from one scene to another, maybe twice in the whole production. And it hasn't been asked of me to come and see the production, but I have produced nonetheless. To other productions where I'll do a lot of pre-production in advance, perhaps maybe a musical or something. I'll be writing a lot of songs in advance, and then I'll essentially be in most of the rehearsal after composing, rewrites, all that kind of thing. We'll work it through with cast and singers, and then unleash it on the world in all its glory. And here's the notation for the chords. So these are all real cellos, but recorded in Vienna, and then I buy a software package and I can assign them to my keyboard. This year I was fortunate enough during the lockdown to have been awarded the Irish Times Theatre Award for Best Soundscape for The Alternative, for The Examination, and for In Our Veins, 3 different productions, and they were all quite varied. But they all did have music and sound as a kind of something to the forefront of the production, even though actually, so for example in The Examination it was quite minimal. A couple of big moments, but generally speaking it was quite minimal. But without it, I really think the production wouldn't have been able to get to the level that it got. The writing and the acting and everything was top notch, but I felt I was able to bring another level, I guess, to the production that I think gave it a cohesion, I suppose. The alternative with Fishamble was kind of a multimedia event anyway. There was live TV cameras and studio, and the audience were kind of involved as if they were a TV studio audience. So there was lots of stuff about sig tunes and lots of microphone work that we had, and lots of kind of storytelling based on video inserts. So there was lots of score and elements like that I would have brought in to make it feel like it was a kind of historical piece, or a kind of a light piece, or that kind of idea. And then In Our Veins was kind of a historical piece based on Dublin and the kind of the Monto district, and that was mostly score work we did in that. A couple of songs that the cast sang, some fantastic singers in the cast. So all in all, they were big productions, but they were quite varied and different from each other. Pianos at the moment just playing very low on the background, kind of reinforcing some of the low string stuff that's going on. When the lockdown was announced in mid-March, I was in rehearsals for Circle of Friends, and that obviously stopped completely production, as did all the other productions that were coming up. So I had a Broken Talkers show that we were about to start, The Misunderstanding of Myra with Junk Ensemble in the Dance Festival, which would have been in May. Shadow of a Gunman in the Gate was coming up, and various things were lined up after that through the summer and up to the festival. So that all stopped. It was a worrying moment, but thankfully we got the COVID payment that came in, so that stabilized things, and that actually gave me a bit of time, gave me a bit of space, I think, to think. A few things I'm working on. I'm actually practicing piano a lot more, which is good because I've been very remiss in that. But I've begun working on a few different things myself. I've done a few small projects. Fallow Table is one of the pieces that I did, which I really enjoyed. That was a piece that was modelled on equipment used in the 60s. This too is a built-in part of the Logic Pro system, which is just another EQ, but I've done nothing with that. I've just put it through it to give it that kind of warm sound. But I think the lockdown has been, it was obviously very worrying at the start, but I do feel it's given me that headspace to kind of reevaluate and have a think about the work that I've been doing. But it's also been really useful for kind of retraining in a way, and I've been, going through bits of software and scores and orchestrations and how do you do this and that, learning new tricks and just that's been really useful, I think. Reclarifying a lot of things for me as well. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to work whenever we can all do that safely. There's a few things starting soon. We have a Rough Magic show in Kilkenny with Stanley Townsend in a one-person production, but with a very limited audience. So that'll be my first experience of a mid-lockdown show, but with the theatres open. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out. And then hopefully a couple more later on in the year. So we'll see. I mean, it's still financially very unstable times, so that's still worrying. But we'll have to see what the new government is going to do for us. What I've done is, for example, taken out low end on this EQ, equalizing, which is basically the frequencies of the sound. So if I don't like a particular sound, I'll take out a frequency or reduce it or something. This is a compressor. This kind of just tightens the whole sound. I also think that the lockdown period has kind of brought into sharp relief how vulnerable we are as a community. So I think companies just need to be aware of that, that how the freelancers are exposed financially and kind of in terms of their livelihood. And I think Liam Bell made some fantastic points recently in an article for the Irish Times about that. We've always kind of plugged away from one gig to the next, and we're always so busy with each gig. I think it doesn't give us time to kind of hope and ask companies to make sure that they're doing their best, which I'm sure they are, but also their resources are stretched as well. So I think this will be, again, part of the new government's brief to try and focus attention on people that bring so much to the country and to our kind of reputation abroad. And as people keep saying, that we're always wheeled out, and various elements of our work is wheeled out at appropriate times to show how great we are. But are we being looked after in the right way, considering everything we do for the country? This is Fallow Table by Junk Ensemble, shot and directed by Luca Truffarelli. And I just talk you through how I put the score for this together. So for example, here's the kind of cello ostinato section running through it. And here's the notation for the chords. So these are all real cellos, but recorded in Vienna, and then I buy a software package and I can assign them to my keyboard. Here's the one of the piano parts, just the simple line on top. One of the instruments that I'm using at this particular moment is the violas. I'm using the pizzicato patch, and when I say patch, I mean that's the particular sound that the instrument is making. So you can see I could use short notes or dynamics or long notes. They're the various patches up there that I can use. Then I can also add some of these elements here, like expression, release, attack. So expression basically is a volume controller, but it's also an intensity controller as well. So you can spend a lot of time working on the actual sound and developing it depending on how much detail you want to go into. I'll just show you some of the reverbs that I was using. So I use a piece of software called Altiverb, and they basically have recorded impulse responses in various famous rooms and buildings around the world. So I can take the sound of one of these particular venues and apply it to my music. All sorts of things like you could have something indoors, you can have outdoors, you can have cars, you can have all sorts of different spaces that you can apply. Up here is my tempo map, so you can see it started at 89 BPM, the blue line there, 112 BPM, 101, so that's basically the kind of tempo changes that the piece goes through. You can plot them in, or you can, the software will follow it itself sometimes. Just on the violin, second violin here, I use, so actually I'll show you on the cello instead. I use something called articulation sets. So if I take away the automation, you can see the articulation at the moment is a short note, like a staccato note. But I can choose and apply whichever articulation I want to put onto the note. So I'll write with usually a legato articulation generally, and then with that in mind, I'll go, well, this section's going to be staccato or pizzicato or flautando or whatever it might be. So back up onto back to the piano section. There are many different types of pianos that you can buy in software form. One I'm using on this one is one called Una Corda, and you can change various aspects about the sound, how loud the pedal is, what kind of an ambience there is. One of the effects I put on it is this kind of radio-ish, old school, old 1940s sound. Give it a kind of crunchy warmth that I just kind of like to seem to fit with the piece. Pianos at the moment just playing very low on the background, kind of reinforcing some of the low string stuff that's going on. So this piece of software is called Omnisphere, which is a synth, which is a really useful piece of gear. So it has all these kind of presets built in, so these are all factory ready kind of sounds that come with it. So what I'll usually do is find something that I like, and then I'll start playing with it. So in here we can see that it can be made up of 4 different elements. This one's made up of 2, and I can change various things like the envelope, etc. Frequencies, cut-offs, frequencies, etc. Then for kind of like this section here is the overall mix. So what I've done is, for example, taken out low end on this EQ, equalizing, which is basically the frequencies of the sound. So if I don't like a particular sound, I'll take out a frequency or reduce it or something. This is a compressor. This kind of just tightens the whole sound. That was a piece that would have modelled on equipment used in the 60s. This too is a built-in part of the Logic Pro system, which is just another EQ, but I've done nothing with that. I've just put it through it to give it that kind of warm sound. This is a bit of limiting / compression, and again that just kind of serves to tie the whole piece together. So it's made up essentially of a string section with these various synths down the bottom and a couple of piano parts on top. And if you look to the right there, it's mostly on the pianos that I'm using at the moment. It's that there's one part labelled piano, even though it's on a bass line, because I would have copied it down from the piano part and made the bass line out of whatever I performed in for the piano. Then we just go into this credits section.